What's up, y'all? Welcome to episode 162, Talking Games. I'm your host, Edward, and happy to be joined by a decent friend, like good friend. We're on opposite ends of the coasts, right?
Yeah. Just a few thousand miles.
Yeah, that's it. And we see each other on when we go to convention, when we went to conventions and that type thing. So,
Yeah.
so I'm Edward, and who are you?
I'm John from
Hey.
JonGetsGames. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for being here. But here's my question. For everybody out there, is it really John? Or is it just me sped up? Because y'all listen, a lot of people, I've been told, listen to this show at like 1.25 speed or 1.5 speed. And I've heard repeatedly that I sound just like John. And so my question is it John, or is it just me sped up and I'm really having a conversation with myself today? You'll never know. And for those that are watching live on YouTube, you're thinking, oh, I see John. He's right there. But have you seen how good the deep fakes get? Just
Right.
pull it from his Q&As and everything else, the stuff he does on YouTube. And, so hey, I'm just saying, you'll never know.
Well, let me put it this way. I'm very used to talking to myself in my videos, so I would empathize if that's what you were actually doing.
Right? Yeah, so I'm in Boston, and John, you're like Bay Area, California?
Yeah, I live in Richmond, California.
All right, cool.
The other side of the land.
I assume everybody knows who you are. Like your following's as big, if not bigger than mine, and like
we've been doing this for almost the same amount of time.
Yeah, so I mean,
like within a few months, I think.
I think so. So if you know me, you know John. If you know John, you know me. Whatever. So anyway, we're here to talk games. So start off. You're the guest here. So start. You've been going down this rabbit hole lately.
Yeah, that's something I tend to do. I've found with board games. Like 2 years ago, year and a half ago or so, I fell down a Cube Rails rabbit hole. And I still feel like I'm kind of down there. Like I'm not over that, but like that was the only thing I was really focusing on for a month, for about a year. And over the last month, pretty much the only thing I've been playing is card games, like trick-taking games, card shedding, climbing games, that kind of thing. And I kind of didn't realize I was so far down the hole until I started looking at the games that I've been playing, because like I do these exclusive opinion episode things. They're like Patreon exclusives where I talk about all the games I'm playing, and like I make these lists, and I'm just like, oh, trick-taking, climbing, trick-taking, like that's all I'm doing right now. I'm playing the game Carnegie, which is amazing. But
big fan also over here. So yes,
it's an incredible game. But yeah, it's been really fun doing that. I mean, I guess it's just part of my personality. Like once I find something that's interesting, I want to kind of keep digging at it and see where it goes. And like so many niches in the hobby. I don't know if card gaming is really a niche. Like trick-taking games have been around for hundreds of years. But
I think it is, because I think there are enough people out there that, I mean, you talk about games like Tishu and stuff like that. And I mean, if you want to go old school, like Bridge, to where I think card game, trick-taking, ladder, or climbing games, whatever, I think that very much is a thing that a lot of us do, I would say, as a part of other gaming. And then there are people that this is it's very much centric. I would say there's as much of that as there is like train gamers that are, whether it's Cube Rails or 18xx or whatever. I think, I very much think there is something to that.
Yeah. And the thing for me, I think that's really grabbed me is honestly a very similar reason why Cube Rails grabbed me, and honestly are still like, I'm still very interested in playing lots more Cube Rails, because they are simple games to teach that allow some really cool layers of I don't know, innovation, of mechanical innovation. Like since I started really getting into board games like 15 years ago, I've known that the thing I care most about is the mechanics of games. Like I'm mechanics first. Theme is fine. Like theme can help a game and whatnot, but like, I mean, look at, Cube Rails games. Like there's just about no theme on those things, and same thing with card games. But they, again, just like Cube Rails, they lean on simplified systems that a lot of people are familiar with, and then they say, well, this time we're going to do this crazy thing, and you're like, wait, what is that going to work? And then this time you're going to do that crazy thing. And I just love that you can teach these games in like 10 minutes and then play them oftentimes in about an hour. There's honestly a lot of correlation between the card game rabbit hole and the cube rail rabbit hole. And I think it's a bit of a rebellion against the current state of modern Euros, because I'm a Euro player through and through, and I have been for so long, and I still love Euro games. But wow, it seems like a lot of big Euro games that come out these days just have so much stuff, so many components, so many rules, so many modules, and
it's funny you mentioned that, because the
it's
last
overwhelming.
2 games that I played, and the 2 that I'm really going to talk about today, are On Mars, which I mean, it's a Lacerda, so ergo it's pretty heavy on the rules, and Clinic, which has, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, something like 70 expansions. Or, you know, little modular expansions.
Right, yeah.
And also is incredibly rules dense in that regard. Yeah. So, yeah, no, I totally agree with.
So it's, you know, and also I'm the primary rules teacher, which I'm totally okay with. Honestly, it's to the point these days where if I'm not teaching the rules, I almost wish I was. Like, I'm so used to it.
and I'll be honest, sitting where you and I do, being the rules teachers, a lot of times there are some people that maybe shouldn't.
But yeah, so it's just like so many of these games that I'm really excited about to play, that I love, like Imperial Steam. I just played that a couple weeks ago and had a wonderful time. It's a really good game that takes like at least 45 to 50 minutes to teach. And, you know, whereas you have, you know, a couple of card games I'm going to be talking about soon, like you teach them in 5 minutes and they play in, you know, 30 to 45 minutes. And like you just taught and played a full game in an hour, and now teach and play a new game. And I love that variety. Like, I don't mind sitting down to play a game for a long time. Just last night, I played a 4-player game of Brass Birmingham, and it took us about 4 hours. The game is amazing, and I won, and it felt so good, but it took 4 hours. And like, to a certain extent, while I did have a great time with that, part of me wonders if I might have had more fun if I played 4 different games that were also quite interesting, because of the, you know, the novelty factor of, you know, going into a new thing. Also, just like the stress level of like feeling like you might be winning. Like this whole, like Brass Birmingham, like all Brass games, has like 2 eras, and we finished the first era and I was winning, and I was not expecting that, and I was winning by just a hair, and suddenly I was like, oh, now I care more about winning because I feel like I'm in a position to win this game. And so the whole second era, I was just like, oh, like even more like, 'cause like it was attainable, so it felt really good to get there. But you know, sometimes it's nice to wipe the slate clean after 60 minutes, like, okay, the game is done, start a new one, right?
And you know, it's funny that you mentioned like the playing one longer game or playing a number of shorter games, which gives a better feel or which gives a better experience to people. And I've struggled. I've kind of fought against that in a sense, to where there are people that like, oh, I would much rather, like what you had said, played say 4 games in the span of the time it took to play 1 game. And I think that's, I mean, obviously it comes down to personal taste and, you know, play what you dig, enjoy what you enjoy. But I think as long as you're enjoying a game and it's not overstaying, like I don't want to play a 2-hour game that takes 4 hours. Ain't nobody want that, right?
Right. Yeah.
But if I'm enjoying my time, both with the people around the table as well as with the puzzle that is the game that we're playing, I'm totally fine just playing that one. But I also, as I've gone longer in this hobby, I now less rail against that kind of mentality of playing more different games is better than just appreciating that, no, you know, I'll be honest, there are times I feel the same way, right? So it's either a mood or a feeling or just a personal choice, and it's not necessarily something to rail against. And I think where that originally came from is the fear of these heavier Euros going away. And I think there was a time over the last couple of years, handful of years, to where there was, it felt like the ebb as opposed to the flow part of gaming started to trend that way. And I was like, oh no, these are the games that I really enjoy. Don't make them go away, because if people aren't playing them, then they're not going to get designed, they're not going to get published, and all that. So I think it was and not so much from a show standpoint, but just from a personal, no, I want my heavier games. Don't, no.
Right.
And so now I've mellowed in my later years.
Yeah, they don't appear to be going away. That's for sure.
Right.
And like, I don't want to say that I do wish I'd played 4 games last night, because I had a wonderful time. Like, Brass Birmingham is so good. I love both brasses. But it's just, like you said, it kind of depends. Earlier this week, I played 4 card games over the course of 3 hours with some friends, and that was also, I would say, equally satisfying, even though I only won one of those, and I put it winning in quotes. I'll talk about it soon. This game, Hachi Train, most people win that game.
Okay, all right, okay. I'm curious to hear about it. Let me ask you, since you keep bringing up this winning thing, is winning a big deal to you?
I would say medium deal. I don't know. It's kind of a cop-out answer. I can definitely enjoy games that I lose. I mean, we're gonna talk about Trick and Trade in a minute too, but I played that one twice and I've come dead last both times, and I think it's amazing, and I want to keep playing it. Yes, right. But winning definitely helps. Like, there's definitely endorphins that go into play there. But it can be, I don't know, I found it to be a bit of a double-edged sword. Like I said with the Brass Birmingham, like, I was winning going into the second half, which added almost this extra pressure that I put on myself to be like, okay, well, now winning is totally attainable. Like, if I had face planted in the first half and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do the best I can in the second and see where I go, it's a little bit different. We talked about Carnegie just a little bit ago, and I played that game 11 times now, like 5 times over the last 3 weeks or so, and I have won, I think, 6 out of those 11. And there was a minute where I'd won 6 out of 9. So you can tell the streak I've been going on lately. I've been starting to lose. But I found myself like I'd won this game far more than even half the times I played it, against 3 and 4 players, like coming in first. That I started to go into future games like, okay, well, I got to keep winning. Got to prove myself to myself, because I have this track record of having won it. And honestly, it almost feels good to have lost a few times since then, because it kind of keeps
the pressure off.
It kind of takes the pressure off. Like you go for that streak, like in your head, like, oh, I've won 3 in a row. What if I won 4 in a row? And it's like, okay, well, let's just break the streak and just get back to the fun of the game. Like,
see, and for me, I used to care a lot more about now. Let's be clear. When we're playing a game, whether it's on camera or off, I'm trying to win, right?
Sure,
I mean, because I think that's that unwritten agreement that we all have when we sit at a table, that everyone's trying to win, right? Unless we all come into hell. I'm saying, except in learning games, but even in learning games, you're still trying to do well in a game, right? But I've learned that as the host of the show, 2 things. Number 1, it's more entertaining if I just go down in flames. And a lot of my friends love railing on me. And so there's that. And the second part is, I've learned that I don't like that pressure that you just talked about of really like, oh no, I don't want to blow it. I don't want to. And so I've just changed my mentality of that to where obviously I'm trying to win, but if I don't, I expect to lose anyways. Plus, and this is a credit to, and this isn't saying any like derogatory towards your friends, I have a lot of really smart people out here that I play with that are far smarter than I am. So I'm like, oh, I should have lost because you have a double doctorate. I mean, you're a genius.
We're actually in a similar position. My main gaming group for the last 9 years started by a bunch of PhD students who became PhDs.
Exactly, right?
I do not have any PhD or grad or any of that kind of stuff. So
I'm a Marine.
Yeah.
I mean,
smart people.
Big dumb animal, right? But no, I mean, but it's a lot of fun. But I've learned that the stress that, like, really caring about winning, I guess, and having that matter to me, with that gone, I have been able to relax a lot more when I'm playing games, and I found
Yeah.
that I've benefited from that. And I'm not even talking about the other people or anybody watching or anything like that. I've just noticed for myself. And again, I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong. Please don't take it that way. I'm just saying
Yeah.
for
I mean, that's
myself.
the mentality I try to be in. And honestly, like I pointed out Carnegie because I feel like I kept winning that one and it almost kind of went against my mentality of trying to win but not
Right.
care about it too much. Like it started to put this silly pressure that I totally did on myself. So it's just kind of a funny introspective thing. I've known forever that I have a tendency to being a whiner in games. Like that's the reason I sold Twilight Struggle, because I hated myself while I played Twilight
No.
Struggle.
Oh, seriously, for real.
Like the game is amazing. Like
Right.
like it's an amazing game, but every time I played it, I would just like kind of have an out of body experience watching myself playing the game and be like, I don't want to I don't want to play against that person. I just, draw the hand of cards like, oh, of course.
Of course, these all help you, and now I got it. Great.
Again. And yeah, I just hated myself when I played that game. So I got rid of it just so that I wouldn't have that temptation.
That's amazing.
And I'm definitely that person who, like, way more times than I like to count, halfway through the game, like, oh, I'm losing, oh, you're winning, blah, blah, blah. And then I kind of end up winning. And then it makes the win way less fun. Like, if you complain that you're losing and then you win, I just feel ashamed.
Right.
And, like,
now you feel like,
oh,
you were that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's so I've been really working on shutting that part of my brain up to lesser and greater extents. Now, at the end of the game when I lose, I'm just like, I knew it.
Okay, validation.
Stop myself from saying it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It was internal, at least. And the funny thing is I Jess has commented to me on a number of occasions that I do the exact same thing or I used to do the same thing, to where I'm like, oh, I'm doing terrible. Oh, I am the worst. Oh, I'm such an idiot. And then I end up winning. And
I shot myself in the foot. Now I'm just totally out, dead last.
Right. And
of course you're helping the winner, blah, blah, blah.
And she pointed out something that really, I think, was a significant change, thing that helped me change was, when you're being depreciate, you're kind of like, oh, I'm an idiot, I'm dumb, that was right, and you end up winning. How do you think that makes the other people at the table feel? Because if you're dumb and you won, how does that look? And I was like, oh God, no, I don't want to be. No.
I think that just makes my friends think that I'm kind of annoying.
And nobody wants that, right?
No, definitely not.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm looking at chat, and apparently this is my therapy coming through too, and this self-realization and going through. So hey, we're growing as people, John. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So good on us for that. All right, enough psychotherapy stuff on ourselves. Let's talk games. So Hachi Train, start there.
Yeah, well, I'll actually pull out a little bit farther, like a higher look.
Yeah.
So I knew very little about card games about 2 months ago. Like, Tichu is arguably my favorite game. I played it arguably around 200 times. I've 100 log plays, but I've played it probably about 100 times before I even started logging plays back in 2010. So Tichu is amazing. It's one of my favorite games ever. It's a ladder climbing, card shedding style game.
Okay, hold on. Let me interrupt you, because I struggle with this. What the hell is a ladder climbing game? Like, what does that mean?
Okay, well, I'm not an authority on this.
Sure.
But it's my understanding. People oftentimes say it's a climbing shedding game, like, as those two words kind of join together, because they frequently are. But the idea of climbing, ladder and climbing, they're functionally the same word.
Right.
Also, interestingly enough, in Japan, they call them millionaire games. So if you hear like, oh, it's a millionaire style game, millionaire means climbing, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay.
And the idea is when you play like cards or something into play, right? A pair of twos or something like that, and somebody beats it with a pair of threes, they're climbing. Like it's a higher value thing. Maybe it's something like Tichu, where you have to stay inside. So somebody plays a full house. other people have to play a full house, but they play a better one. Or it's a game like Scout, which is also a climbing game, where, someone plays a single and you could beat that with, a 3 of a kind or something like that. You're still climbing up in the power rankings, and then you end up stopping once everybody passes because nobody has anything stronger. Nobody can climb any farther. And in general, those games go hand in hand with shedding games, which the idea of those is just get rid of your cards. Just shed your cards as quickly as you can. And that's, in my opinion, the key difference between those and trick-taking games. Like, trick-taking is oftentimes, like, it's a total pet peeve of mine, but when people teach you a trick-taking game, and, I need to just get over it, but it's not. It's a shedding game, because Tichu is all about playing your cards all before everybody else, whereas trick-taking games in general, I mean, one of the reasons I'm really falling down the rabbit hole is because every game is breaking the rules in some way. But in general, in trick-taking games, everybody plays exactly one card. And then after all cards are played, you figure out who played the best card, and then everybody plays another single card. So everyone has symmetric hand sizes, usually, in trick-taking games. And that's the main difference, I guess. I mean, there's other things like trumps and suit mattering. Like, frequently in climbing games and shedding games, suit matters not at all or barely any. Like, it almost doesn't matter in Tichu, for example. And that's not always the case. Haggis suit matters a lot. But anyway, those are the kind of main things that split these.
That's the best explanation. Because I struggle with that, because I think of Tichu as a trick-taking game, so I apologize for triggering the pet peeve. But you're right, it's a climbing game, and I see the difference now, because to me, taking a trick is, oh, I won this, so I take that, right?
And we say that, like, when we play Teacher, like, oh, you won that trick. Like, so I totally get it.
Right, but that makes sense. So the climbing is, like the hierarchy of, okay, beating. So I got it. Okay, that helps me, honestly. And I imagine I'm not the only one out there that struggles with understanding that.
Yeah, so I mean, one way to think about it is, shedding and trick-taking are the goal. And climbing and trick-taking, I don't actually know a good alternate word for this in the trick-taking, is the methodology. Like, climbing in these shedding games is like going up and up and up, whereas in trick-taking in general, you want to, there's like must follow games where you have to follow the suit of the previous card play. There's may follow where you don't have to follow, and depending on what you did, you check to see who has the strongest one. They're both ways to evaluate the power level of that trick. So it's kind of like the mechanics of how and the mechanics of why. I just don't know. I guess you would just say, may or must follow is essentially the way it works in trick-taking games. Again, usually, because there's always something that breaks.
Oh yeah, every game that comes out is breaking a rule, like from a hearts or spades. You go old school classic like that, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
with that said, Tichu, I love Tichu. I just don't get a chance to play it much. And yeah, when you and I get together, we need to sit.
Whenever I go to conventions, I literally always have a Tichu deck on me. As long as I have my backpack, I have a Tichu deck on me. I own so many of them. I am always down to play. When I first fell into board games back in 2008, I started off with Settlers of Catan with a side friend group, and it was great. We played that like weekly for a while, but then I wanted more, and so I found a meetup.com group that was like an hour away from me. And I started going there 2 to 3 times a week. It was a very active group back then. And every single night, we reached Tichu o'clock, which we would just kind of joke, which was usually around 10 to 11. The game night would usually end around midnight or, sometimes 1, depending on the store we were at. And it was just like everyone would show up, everyone would play board games and whatnot. And then, after playing 1 or 2 games, be like, Tichu? And then suddenly, so you'd like look around and like, okay, now there's 1 game. And then an hour goes by and now 4 games are happening. And then by like, an hour before the store would close, 90% of the tables would have people playing Tichu. So it was an amazing experience. I would do that 3 times a week. So I played a lot of it. And like I said, I probably played over 200 games, but I played it like 7 times in the last 6 years. So like most of that was a long time ago. The same kind of situation. I just don't have as many opportunities. Mm-hmm. I mean, most of the people I play games with do still love it. But I mean, honestly, JonGetsGames has existed for 8.5 years. And in the last 8.5 years, I played less than 10 games to teach you. And so I think part of it is the YouTube channel. Like I've always been a bit cult of the new, well, a lot, but especially once I started a YouTube channel about board games, that really exacerbated that. And, especially way back when I was doing reviews and I really actively needed to get these games played to be able to review them, it pushed the time for Teach You away, which is unfortunate. But I played it 3 times in the last month and a half. So that almost half as much over the last 8 years. And it's totally rekindled my love for it.
That's awesome.
So,
and trust me, I feel your pain.
So,
and not pain. I mean, it's a choice. Like we love what we do. Don't get me wrong. But like stuff like that, like it's not always playing what you want. It's playing what you have to. Right. Yeah, I get it.
Well, not to talk about Teach You too much, but whatever. We're just here to talk about games.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine.
The game's amazing, but it has a high barrier to entry. I've definitely failed at teaching it several times. So that's tough, as in like I teach it and we'll play like 2 hands and everyone's like, let's do something else. And then
it bounces off of folks.
I just get so crushed because I just want them to love this game I love. But it's not a short game, especially compared to most card games, which is, as I said, one of the reasons I'm liking playing all these card games lately is because they are almost always done after even 45 minutes. And 45 minutes is generally like kind of on the longer end for one of these. And Teach You games, from my experience, tend to go from 45 minutes to 90 minutes. Like a 45-minute game of Teach You feels relatively quick. I went to a card game convention a month ago, specifically focused on playing climbing and shedding games and that kind of thing. It was the Portland Games Collective convention. The first time they've ever done it, it was in Portland, Oregon, and there are about 40 people who showed up to that one. It was 2 days long, and we just played games for 13, 14 hours for these 2 days in a row. So it was amazing.
Just card games.
Just card games. There were a couple games that were played that you maybe argue are towing the board game line. It wasn't like anti-board game. People brought some board games. There was a copy of Carnegie there, and there were a couple of people who wanted to get it played, but the focus was definitely on the cards. But I played Teach You twice there, and the second game was with my wife Jessica, who also loves Teach You, against these 2 guys who had just met, Bert and Dan, who are just an absolute riot. And they, like, on the first day I was playing something else and I said the word Teach You, and this guy Dan, who I hadn't met before, like popped up from like 20 feet away and he was like, did somebody say Teach You?
And that's like a meerkat.
Yeah, like that's the way it is with people who love Teach You. Like they hear that word and like, is there an opportunity
someone else
to play?
Plays it? Yes.
So we played a game of it the second day, the 4 of us, and it took 2 hours. It went 16 hands, and it was one of the best games of Teach You I've ever played in my life. But it took 2 hours. Like it had these highs and lows. Like I was almost deaf. I was like yelling so much. Like we were having so much fun playing it. But that's a reasonable commitment to the game. Anyway, so I have a predisposition to liking card games, obviously, because I love Teach You so much. And the reason I went to this convention is because I knew it would be small, and I was just interested, like, in learning a whole bunch of new things. The Portland Games Collective has a Discord server, and I joined it a few months ago, and I was instantly just completely lost. All these, different channels talking about all these different games, different threaded things. Like one's all about trick taking, one's all about climbing, and I didn't recognize any of the games that these people were talking about. Like, and these people are in love with these games, and it was an infectious love for sure. But I would try to follow the chat, and it was just a very unusual feeling to be me and not recognize any of these, because this is my life. Like, this is my full-time career. I literally every month scour Board Game Geek for all the new games that are posted, and I talk about them in a vlog, like all the ones that catch my attention. Like, I feel like I have my finger on the pulse of board gaming. And then to be so completely lost. And a big part of it is because apparently there's a card game renaissance happening that's the epicenter is Japan. That seems to be the case anyway. And so many games are coming out of there, and so many amazing ideas and thoughts. And it's really cool. And so I saw this infectious love for these, and that made me decide to go to this convention. And I left that convention infected, essentially. Like, I had so much fun, and I essentially arrived there and I just said, I'm playing literally whatever. Like, people are like, do you want to play this? I was like, I'll play literally anything you put in front of me, because I know nothing. I know nothing about any of these games. I looked at this table of games in the middle and recognized, the less than 10% of them. And now, like, coming out of that, suddenly I had this framework. Suddenly I played so many of these. I played like 15 or 18 games. I've played so many of these games that are kind of building blocks to kind of understand the discourse and really fall into it. And so subsequently, after that, I put in my first freight forwarding order, which is, I guess, a bit of a rite of passage among this group, where I paid a company in Japan to pay another company in Japan to buy games to ship to the first company. And then I paid that company to ship them again to me, because most of these games, you cannot buy them directly from Japan. You have to freight forward through things. And those 3 games were Hachi Train, Trick and Trade, and a game called Nana, which I've not played yet, but I really want to. And I bought these because I wanted Trick and Trade, because I'd heard about it specifically on a podcast. There's this new podcast called Trick Talkers that's all about trick taking, and they have like 4 episodes out. It's really good. I highly recommend it. And one of them talked about playing Trick and Trade, and I was like, I've got to try that. So it's a trick taking stock game. And, me falling down this, Cube Rails rabbit hole, I realized I love stocks.
The meshing
and I was like,
of the two.
Yeah, I was like, okay, what is going on here? So I heard about it a little bit. I believe the guy who was talking about it is also really into train games, if I remember the person who was talking. So I bought it because of that. I threw Hachi Train on there because I had a train theme and I love trains, and it was a shedding game. I didn't even read the rules. And then Nana was recommended. Apparently Nana is like advanced Go Fish, essentially.
Okay, all right.
It's super light, but apparently it's a riot if you go into it with the right mindset. But I haven't played it yet. So anyway, let's talk about Trick and Trade first, because I think you would dig this game. If you,
I'm already fired up. You said stocks and trick taking, so
stocks and trick taking.
Yeah.
So it's a trick taking game. You're putting 1 card in each round, but it's a may follow game. And my personal preference in trick taking games is may follow. And the idea of that is that the person who starts, they put a card down, it has a suit, and everyone else may follow that suit if they want to. Most trick-taking games are must follow, which means if I put a red card down and you have a red card, you have to play that red card.
See, and I much prefer the must follow,
and
because I come from a background of having played spades and hearts so much growing up that's just ingrained in me.
Yeah, and I think the reason I prefer Mayfollow is because I played Tichu hundreds of times. And, while Tichu is not a trick-taking game, it kind of, the Mayfollow is more that mindset where, like, you could play any of your cards, but what is the right card to play? You can't always play all your cards in Tichu, but you get the idea. I don't like having forced plays, and when you have must-follow games, somebody plays a red card and you only have 1, well, that's a forced play. You don't have a decision in that moment.
See, and the counterpoint to that is, I know that you have this, or it's likely, so I'm trying to draw that out and put you in positions that are uncomfortable, in that regard. So I see both sides of it.
Yeah, it's like there's like more of a decision space for the lead player, but less of a decision space for the follow players oftentimes. But anyway, Trick and Trade, I shouldn't go into all the details of how it works, but at a high level, it's may follow, and it's the kind of game where everybody gets something on every turn, which I like as well. Essentially, everybody puts 1 card down, and then you evaluate the strength of the cards. The lead suit is the strongest one, and then you go down from there. And you just essentially say, it's a 4-player game. Okay, I'm strongest, you're second strongest, third, fourth. And then in that order, you take stock cards from this open tableau, and the cards wonderfully usually give you 2 stocks, frequently 2 different stocks of 4 different colors. Technically, the theme is cryptocurrency, but whatever. If it looks like stocks, I just call it stocks.
Sure.
and then you take that and put it in front of you. And then this is the real catch for the game. Oh, so cool. The card that won gets put into a separate pile, and the rest of them go away. You don't even really take the trick. You don't keep the tricks in front of you. The card that won goes into this pile. And at the end of the game, everyone is going to have stocks in front of them, 1 stock per hand that they dealt. And then those cards that won, they do a majority. In the color that has the highest value over there is going to pay out 3x on those stocks, then 2x, 1x, and minus 1x for the worst stock. But here's the real catch. The power level in that area where you check at the end of the game is inversely proportional to the strength of the card. So if you win with a 10, which is the highest value, it adds 0 to the end game strength. But if you win with a 2, it adds 9, I think. Because obviously it's harder to win with lower values because people can play on top of it. So you do still have that mentality of trying to remember, is somebody out of something? And you can't know because it may follow, but you can see the way they play and kind of infer that, because if you can throw something down late game, it can have a massive impact. The last time I played, I was winning, like 100% winning until the final card play. But my opponent had counted things out right, and they were able to steal the lead in a way that's also really cool. And they played their last card, which was a 2 of orange, which is the strongest one, and the rest of us were out of orange, which meant his won. It went over there, and orange went from being third to first, and I had so many stock in the first place one, it got bumped down to second, and I actually came last because of it. And that was entirely because he could tell he was biding his time and waiting. The other really cool thing about this game, man, I could really rant about this for a while, is that the lead player does not always go to the person who won the trick. And that's also something that is very, I wouldn't even say very common. I'd say just about every trick-taking game, or even shedding game, like the person who wins gets to play the next card. That's like the benefit. In this game, again, you have this public pool draft, and one of the items in that pool is the lead player token. So you have this in this order, you're drafting these the stocks, and if you won the trick, you get to draft first. But the thing is, if you draft the lead player token so that you will lead first in the next trick, you will take the last stock, the one that no one takes. So frequently, the person who wins the trick actually doesn't lead the next trick because they take the quote-unquote best stock for that moment. And sometimes the person who plays the weakest card gets to lead the trick because everybody else takes all the stronger stocks. So they get the quote-unquote weakest stock, but they then get the lead. And the power of the lead is that no matter what, the color of the card that's led will be the color that goes.
Right.
It will either win, or something that's the same color but higher will be the one. So you can dictate the color of cards that are going to go into that majority scoring pool. It is so smart. This game is so freaking smart, and I'm bad at it. I've lost twice in a row now, but I am super impressed by it.
That sounds really clever. So once you tire of it, if you could just send it over here and let us try it, I'd appreciate that, because that sounds legitimately, that sounds fantastic.
It is.
We have enough trick taker people, if you will, in our group that thoroughly like Shrey.
You all love trains. You all love stocks. So.
Exactly. So this sounds like a match made in heaven, and the cleverness and how I'm constantly amazed at how people design games and how they come up with this stuff.
Yeah.
And that just the extra layers that go on don't sound like they add a lot of complexity to it.
No, it's a really fast teach.
Depth to it. Yeah. And that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's just super smart. So that's the reason I put in this order. But then I also threw this other game on called Hachi Train. And I want to apologize to everyone because I'm a total hype man for these things right now, and you cannot buy these. Like even people in the card game Discord, like these are just sold out. like even those people can't acquire these right now. But I'm still going to talk about it because it's so cool. There's this game. Hold on,
you got to understand. There used to be, and there may still be, some degree of this to where people would make the joke. Oh wait, it's out of print. Oh. Now Heavy Cardboard will talk about it.
Yeah, right.
So you're on brand. That works out
okay,
perfect.
Cool.
Yeah.
On brand. Excellent. So Hachi Train, it's interesting. It looks like a watered down knockoff of Scout. Okay. And like at first glance. And I love Scout. Scout was my #1 game from last year.
Big fan. Enjoyed it as well. Yep.
Just a brilliant game.
Yeah.
What was that?
We streamed it. Like
awesome.
enjoyed it so much. We were like, we want to show this off. This is cool.
It's wonderful. I kind of saw it as like an intro into like a T2 like mind space. Like it was T2 adjacent, but it's instead of having a high barrier to entry, it has a low one. So when the rules for Hachi Train came out, a lot of people saw it and they were just like a lot of people didn't even order it because it just looked like a watered down Scout. Just like Scout, you deal out cards, you bring them into your hand, you're not allowed to reorganize them, and then you play down like one card or two or three that are a double, a triple, whatever. But there aren't even runs in Hachi Train. So like in Scout, you can do like 3, 4, 5 and that kind of thing. That doesn't exist in this game. So like, okay, so it's even less. And the entire goal of the game is just to play all your cards. But the catch, and I remember when I actually got the game and I was reading through a translation of the rules, because there's no official translation, but there's fan translations, of course.
Yep.
And there's this one little sentence that says, when you play cards to beat somebody else's, to ladder climb over somebody else, you take those cards back into your hand.
The player your own or the player that you beat?
The player that you beat.
Okay.
So say somebody puts 2 2s down and I beat it with 2 4s. I take their 2 2s, I put them back into my hand, and I did not shed, right? I put 2 cards down and I gained 2 cards back again. So it's a shedding game that is constantly 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. Like you can even go backwards, which is fascinating. And it really puts you in this mindset where you have to pay attention so much to the cards that you're actually winning. And I think that's a really cool thing, because one of the higher level things to figure out in a game like Tichu is when not to play, even though you can. Like frequently, like once you start to learn the rules, you're like, oh, 2 2s, boom, 2 3s, yeah, that beats those, awesome.
But I could have used these 3s to make a bomb or something else. Right, yeah. Yep.
Exactly. Or maybe you had 3 3s, so now you have a single 3, and that could have been a 3 of a kind or something like that. And it can be really nuanced. And in Hachi Train, it's a lot less nuanced, honestly. You just look out, and if they put 2 2s down and I have no 2s in my hand, I'm not strengthening anything. So I probably won't. But if I play something down that I'm reasonably confident will be the strongest, it'll pass around to me and then I can lead. So maybe it's worth taking those 2s to be able to lead something else. So I don't want to oversell its complexity. Like it's a pretty light game, but I've really enjoyed the decision space. I've played it 5 times now, I think, and each game takes about 30 minutes, which is kind of right there in the sweet spot. And it has this interesting other quirk, which is polarizing. I briefly mentioned this earlier on, that I won a game of Hachi Train, which is the only one I won that night. And that's because once the game is over, the player, so you keep playing a hand until one person has cards left. So it's kind of Tichu-like, but there's no partnerships there. Unlike Scout, where as soon as one person goes out, everybody's done.
It's done, right? Yeah,
it's done. So you keep playing, and I like that. I like you keep playing until you get down to sudden death, and then one person is stuck with cards. They flip this card in front of them, and this is such a minor thing, but it just still cracks me up. The theming is trains, and you at the beginning of the game, you deal out this one card, and it says $200 million on it. And on the backside, it says $100 million. So if you're the last person with cards, then you lose $100 million. Feels pretty impactful. You flip your card over.
You're right.
And if you ever flip it over again, then that ends the game. And at the end of the game, the person with the least money loses. So there's frequently going to be multiple winners. So if I have $100 million and you have $200 million, but somebody else has 0, I still win, even though technically I have less than you. So it's one of those games where frequently only one person loses. There might be a tie. I don't want to go into the minutia, but frequently only one person is losing. So it's very frequent to win this game. And I know some people don't like that, especially, competitive-minded people. Like, I want to win the game, but I really like it because of the tweak it puts on the decision space and the stress space, so to speak, because you can only lose twice before you're out and the game is over. So,
and by lose, you mean have cards
be
left,
the last person,
be the last person, right? Yeah.
Be the last person, and so what that means is, like, if the first round happens and that's you, this happened to me the last time I played. I was the first person to not to be holding cards. I flip it over. Now I'm in sudden death for the rest of the game. For the rest of the game, I can't be the last person, but that's the goal. Like, it's not like, I have to be the first person. No, I just have to be not the last person.
I don't have to outrun the bear.
Yes.
Got to outrun you.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And so that I like the stress that brings into play, but I also like that you can kind of bide your time. Somebody goes out and you're like, okay, cool, I still have time. Also, this does a really interesting thing to the luck of the draw. Like, I love Scout, but sometimes you just get a really good hand and you go out and it ends the round and somebody's got 10 cards in their hand and suddenly they're in the negative and it's the first round and it feels a little bit bad.
Right.
But in Hachi Train, like, okay, you got a really good hand. Cool. Well, whatever. You're just one of the people that's going to be going out. And, sure, it's good luck for you, but it doesn't necessarily equate to bad luck to the rest of the table, which I think is pretty interesting.
The positive reinforcement aspect of that type of game, I can appreciate. I've learned that there are, there's negative reinforcement and, whether it's positive interaction, negative interaction, all of that. And I like games that, I got blocked out of this, but I can still take this and this still feels good. That's kind of akin to that.
Yeah.
I don't have to be the first. I just need to not be the last.
Also, from like a fun stress, fun stress can be fun.
Yeah.
From a fun stress perspective, every time somebody goes out, it's just like, you could hit like the boss music in the background gets louder, like you're still in, and like, oh no, they're not, like, oh no, like every single time that gets closer and closer, and then finally it gets down to 2 people, and it's just like, oh, and you're putting cards down, they're taking it back, and then you're putting cards and they're taking it back, and it just goes back and forth. There's like,
and I imagine it's entertaining to watch that. Like if you've already
totally
gone out, you're like, oh, how's this going to play out?
This is not a game that I felt bored going out first, because honestly, it's probably only going to be 2 or 3 minutes until we finish the hand and we go into the next one.
Right.
But also, yeah, you're watching these things happen, and so it has this theme of trains, and it's, paper thin, like most card games, like like many games I like. But I will say that this game has a speeding up vibe to it. Not even just the, oh, somebody went out, but also within the tempo of the actions, the cards that you're putting down, because like you're only putting down singles, pairs, triples, up to, I guess the highest thing you can do in a 4-player game is a 6 of a kind. But 7 of a kind in a 5-player game. Anyway, whatever, lots of cards. But at the beginning, you can't reorganize your hand. So frequently it's like one card. Like you probably don't, it's probably not next to something else. You pull that out, maybe it, it joins a couple things in your hand. So it's like our train, in quotes, is going really slow. Maybe somebody plays a pair. Maybe it goes all the way around with a pair. Okay, cool. But as you start to pull that pair into your hand, that pair matches up with one that you have already, or maybe 2 that you have already, because you could put it anywhere. And the moment somebody puts the first 4 of a kind down, everyone's like, okay, so now we're kind of in 4 of a kind mode. And if somebody beats that 4 of a kind, then they took the previous 4 of a kind into their hand. They now have a 4 of a kind in their hand by definition. And maybe it bunches up with another one they had, so they actually have a 5, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And so there are times in this game where you have a hard time. I've had a hard time, like, getting up to speed, and everybody kind of goes too fast. Like I've had hands where I've got pairs and I can make pairs happen, but suddenly people are playing triples, and then they're playing quadruples, and I'm just like, oh, like everybody's speeding up. And of course, as you beat other things of that type, you continue to reinforce your hand with that kind of type, and it can be tricky. And I have actually worked my way out of that before, which is one of the reasons why I'm really liking this game. It's not like, oh, I just had bad luck, I was only in double mode, and so therefore I lost that round. There are still ways to find your way in and poke in. Also, I know I'm talking about this way too long, but whatever. When you start the game,
I'm enjoying this, and so you're fine. Please.
When you start each hand, if you ask me on for a guest, you just need to be ready for me to talk forever. When you start each hand, you can pass. Like, you don't have to beat. I guess to a certain extent, if you're familiar with Scout, Hachi Train is like you are always scouting playing, or you're always playing scouting. You play cards, pull stuff in, or passing. And if you pass in the beginning of the round, there's this deck of special cards. They're flexi cards that are 1/2s, or 3/4, or 5/5, or 7/8, whatever. Right. There's 4 of those pairs. And if you pass and there's a deck there, you pull it in your hand, and you just pull in a 3/4, and you can put it wherever. If you have a 3 or a 4, then you can start to put that in there.
Now
so
you have
frequently,
pairs, triples, whatever. Right.
And this is part of where the speeding up comes into play, because you frequently pass early. Oftentimes, even though you could beat the card, but that card isn't very good for you, so why would you take it when you could take this flexi card and it could go somewhere else? And maybe you have a 7 and an 8 in your hand, and you put the 7/8 right in between them. So now you have a pair of 7s or a pair of 8s, which means you have flexibility to work off of that. It is a really fun game. Again, I don't want to overhype it. There are people who have played this in the Portland Games Collective Discord who have been pretty shrug on it, and that's totally fine. But I personally am very hyped for it. I've really enjoyed the shedding mind space that it's in. Also, it feels a little bit more beer and pretzels than Scout. And I love Scout, but like, Scout is a game where, okay, the round's over. Okay, count up your points. It's not hard to do that, but it's something to do, and you have to track it somewhere. In Hachi Train, it's just like, oh, one person, that's the person left. Flip the card, deal out the cards. It's just so, just like, go,
low
go,
overhead.
go. Yeah, low overhead. Also, like I said, I've seen games of Scout where one person just blows out the first round and somebody starts at like -9 points. And sure, they could win, but wow, that's a rough slope to get up. Whereas in this game, just because you went out the first round, okay, sure, you're in sudden death for the rest of the game, but you still have a very strong path towards not losing, which I think is good from a mindspace perspective. Also, gosh, I could talk about these things forever. In Scout, the game plays differently at each player count, like 3 players, 4 players, and 5 players, because of the number of cards that you put into their hands. You have a lot more. You have a lot more cards, in a 3-player game than you do in a 5-player game. Also, in Scout, like a big part of it is finishing the round by playing something that nobody can beat. Oh, man, no, you. That's right. If everybody passes a round, to you, yeah, if everybody passes around to you, that ends the round. And it's very easy to do that in a 3-player game because there's only 2 other people to pick apart and scout your hand. So you could potentially end the round very early. Whereas in a 5-player game, that almost never happens. So it's different games at these counts. Whereas in Hachi Train, the deck is always 1 through 8 times the number of players. So no matter the player count, you always deal 8 cards to each player. So you have a similar vibe. Sure, there's more people who could potentially beat that thing that you just put out there, but I feel like it seems to, I've only played 3 and 4. I haven't played 5 yet, and I really want to, but I feel like it seems to have a smoother game space from these player counts. Like, it seems like you're always kind of playing in that same space. Also, how many times have I said also? Because this game doesn't let you do runs, I feel like it makes it less luck-based because of the unsorted hand aspect. You know, if you can do pairs and triples and whatnot, and you can do runs, that gives you a lot more versatility to play this jumble of random cards in your hand. And I think that lends Scout more towards just having a good luck hand. Whereas I've yet to really see somebody just be like, oh, boom, boom, in Hachi Train. Like, the odds of you being able to piece all these things together into pairs, triples, like, I've never seen myself even have 3 of a kind next to each other in my starting hand. The odds of it are pretty darn low. And even if I had that, the other ones are probably all jumbled up as well. So I should probably shut up about this game. It's fun.
No,
I'm sorry you can't play it.
No, and here's the thing. It's infectious, and I think that's cool. And now everyone's going to be really, really excited and really pissed off at John that they can't get this game. So, yay, well done. All right.
I will say it's relatively proxyable, this one, as in you could get a couple of decks of cards. You just need 1 through 8 in a number of, like I said, times the number of players. And that special deck of cards with like the 1/2, 3/4, honestly, you could just get like a circle sticker, like a packing sticker, and just put it over there and just write that on there, because you shuffle that deck, but if they all had those stickers, then you wouldn't be able to count something from there.
Sure.
And you can't, and I was going to say, you can't tell if somebody has one of those in their hand, but in the actual version of the hand, those special cards have a different back. So you can actually see when somebody has those flexi cards in the back of their hand. So that's even an aspect to it.
I actually was wondering about that, whether or not they blend or whether or not they stand out, like you can tell, right?
Yeah. So anyway, these are not heavy games by any stretch of the imagination, but they're fun.
I mean, let's face it. You and I both enjoy heavy Euros, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
for sure. But we also like other games. Like, you and I both are. I understand that you're down these rabbit holes here or there, but you and I are both very much Omni gamers. And
the only thing I don't play is social deduction. Like,
I do when people want to do so, but it's not a frequent thing. And obviously, theoretically, I enjoy playing war games, even though I'm struggling getting them to the table of late. But I just because it's not heavy, still enjoy it. So I think there's a big enough audience out there that's going to really enjoy hearing about these.
Yeah,
so
it's just
let me kind of pick pick at you a little bit for how did you figure out these ways to order it? Like, I'm curious, because I know there's James and there's Rand are kind of my contacts, like, for these really obscure, especially just Asian games in general, right? To be able to get those. But if somebody wanted to kind of figure out how do you even, like, I wouldn't even know where to start on that outside of reaching out to the people I know.
Yeah, and that's essentially what happens. Like, I hesitate to even say it because, like, I know people who have spent just a lot of money on these things. But
I do as well. Hi, Jess.
Yeah. There's a whole sub channel on that Portland Games Discord all about importing, and and they are more than willing to show you how to do it. That's how it happened to me. It specifically happened because, again, I heard about Trick and Trade, but it was sold out, and then somebody made a post like, Trick and Trade's back in stock, and I was like, ooh, okay, things just got real. Let's actually figure this thing out now.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Fair enough. So wow, now I'm not as excited about the couple of games. So I went on vacation for a couple of weeks with the family, and I'll talk about that towards the end, whatever. But I honestly have only played 2 games since I've been back. I've played them multiple times, and it's reaching back 3.5 years from when I originally played the prototypes of both of these games, and that's On Mars and Clinic. On Mars being Vital Lacerda's and a Clinic Deluxe, technically, being Alban Viard. I'll start with On Mars. So On Mars, not the latest, because I guess Weather Machine is more recent for Vital.
I don't think it's shipped yet, though.
Fair point. So, and again, it's easy for you and I to sometimes forget that, because you and I get prototypes so often that you lose the timing of things.
Yes.
But on Mars, you're flying out to Mars to colonize it, and it's a typical Vital Lacerda game in that you have one worker. Theoretically, you do one action, and then possibly people can piggyback, whatever that might be. And the nice thing about this is it's a lot more, it's less procedural than some of the other bigger games that he has. And not picking on Weather Machine, but using Weather Machine as an example, to where, and what I mean by procedural is some of his games, or Lisboa would be another, to where on your turn, when you're taking this action, you better go step 1 through 8, and you better hit every one of those steps. Because if you just do it from memory, you're likely to forget, oh, I could have gotten this, or I should have taken that, or something along those lines. Yeah. So very procedural in that you better follow the steps. There is some of that, but it's less intricate in a lot of ways. It's still busy, and it's still a whole lot of stuff in interconnectedness that, okay, if I do this, then I need to be able to, that'll allow me to do this, which then later on be able to allow me to do this to finally be able to put my cube out there to be able to get what it is I'm trying to get and score points. This is a little bit more intuitive and a little bit more flowing than some of the other games, again, looking at Lisboa and Weather Machine. Now, when I originally played this 3.5 years ago with the prototype, I was pretty smitten with the game, and I enjoyed, I don't know, half a dozen plays, give or take, or so. Then I played the solo, and it's no secret, I enjoy solo gaming, but I disliked the solo game in On Mars so much that it completely turned me off from the game. I never wanted to play On Mars again. It was such a bad experience. And the reason for that is, when I'm playing a solo game, I want to focus on what it is I'm doing and what I'm trying to accomplish. So if you're playing against an AI or whatever, whether it's flowcharts, whatever, I don't want to spend 10, 15 minutes just working through the AI's turn. That's not fun. And it's a pain in the butt, and it's complex, and it takes you out of the game. And On Mars very much had that. And I bounced off of the game so hard that it completely soured me on even wanting to look at the game again. If anybody said, hey, you want to play On Mars, I was like, I'll play at the other table. I have no interest. I disliked it that much. But we're revisiting for the 2020 Golden Elephant Award because COVID, yada, yada, yada. And we're trying to get ready for that. And a number of folks hadn't played On Mars. And they were like, okay. And I was like, all right, it's my responsibility to do this. I need to go ahead and make sure that they can play it in the whole 9 yards. And we played it, and I was like, wow, I'm really enjoying this. And so I realized, oh, no, it was just the solo plays and the way the bot runs in the solo that I really disliked. It wasn't On Mars itself.
Yeah.
And apparently the expansion has a new solo version that makes it considerably better. And that got me thinking. And this is a question I have for you. And there's one game that I kind of pick on that I felt like was not necessarily broken, but not a game I ever want to play without the expansion, and that's Vinhos. Like, I'm never ever. I'm sorry, not Vinhos. Viticulture. I would never play Viticulture without Tuscany, ever, because Tuscany just makes the game so much better, and it fixes the blocking issue that's in that game. So basically, the way I see it is Tuscany fixed Viticulture. Is it okay if an expansion fixes a base game. And I'm like, ugh, I'm struggling with that right now within myself. Or am I making
I mean, I guess
a
one way to
mountain out
think
of a
about it
molehill?
is, what's the alternative? Like let's say the base game is out there and you consider it to be broken. The alternative is either the expansion fixes it or the expansion doesn't. Wouldn't
Fair.
it be better if the expansion fixed it?
I guess so, but yeah, I mean, but I'm just frustrated the fact that it existed in its form to begin with and it shouldn't
Yeah.
have been there. But I digress. On Mars, I thoroughly enjoyed multiplayer. Both 3 and 4 players. And it didn't take we expected the 4-player game to, when we streamed it, to be like a 4-hour experience, and we got it done in 2 hours flat, which is
Wow.
remarkable. And
it is a surprisingly quick game from
Yeah.
my experience.
Yeah.
On Mars is, I think it's easily my favorite of the heavy Lacerda games. I think my favorite game with that Lacerda has been a part of is Mercado de Lisboa, which is essentially a Cube Rails game in a lot of ways.
I could see that. It's
a shared incentive game all the way through, and I really love that game. But as far as the heavy ones are concerned, I've played On Mars 3 times, and I've really enjoyed all 3 of those plays. I consider it to be my favorite of the heavy ones. And I know some people, I've heard a lot of people be surprised by that, like bounce off of it. And I don't know. I think On Mars just works for my brain. And I've played it 4 players twice and 3 players once. And I think every one of those games have finished in under 2 hours. And I think that's part of the reason I've really liked it, because it kind of gets there, like without being a slog, in my opinion. Now, that being said, the person I played every single one of these games with was like literally, he's in the back of the rule book as one of the primary play testers. So that helped.
Having somebody know the game that well that can GM it or run the game and make sure that's invaluable.
That definitely helps. So yes. A big asterisk there, but it's cool to hear. I mean, you weren't in that situation and you played a 2-hour game of it. Yep. I just love the so in On Mars, right? You are either in space doing space stuff or you're on the planet doing planet stuff. And as the game goes on, it gets harder to go back and forth.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, it's been like, well, let's see. It's been 2 years since I played it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. The space stuff is just about getting the things together that you need to do the planet
and the
stuff.
colony side is do stuff.
So you just like you fill your arms full of stuff and then jump in a little pod down to the planet, and then you try to stay on the planet as long as possible to just keep doing stuff, because there's that tempo loss of going back and forth.
Exactly.
And I don't know, that just really works for my brain, and I really love the way the planet is built out. I'm trying to. It's been 2 years, but I'm trying to see if are there shared incentives on the planet? Like, when you're putting things down, the way you're building things, you just played it, and it's been 2 years for me, but I seem to remember the way other people built stuff out could open up opportunities that might not have been there already.
Yes.
Is that true?
Oh, totally. Because your tech allows for bigger groups of buildings to be put together.
Right, yeah.
So you can use other players' tech, but they get a benefit. Not you. It doesn't cost you anything. They just get an extra oxygen, which allows them to boost their tech, which then gets them more victory points at the end of the game. So there's that symbiotic relationship, but there's also the scientist cards in which as I build advanced buildings, if you have a scientist that is for that specific type of building, excuse me, you can take your scientist and go on to that card for an executive action or a bonus action to be able to do that for free as a bonus action. But again, it allows me to do that for free as an executive action as well. So there's that symbiotic relationship. And then the building, when you build tiles out on the board, nobody owns them. You only own them when you put an advanced building on there. So yes, there's more. You built this, so now I can go and build an advanced building on it. Hey, thanks for doing that, but we both benefit from that. Yes, exactly.
The reason I brought that up is because I'm noticing that whenever there's a game that I played before 2021 that I liked way more than I thought I would, I'm starting to notice this correlation that it tends to have shared incentives. Like my falling down the cube rails rabbit hole was really me finally being able to put a word to this ephemeral thing that made some games way more fun to me than others. There's many games from the past I'm like, oh, no wonder I like that game so much. And yeah, also I love tile laying games. And while this isn't necessarily a tile laying game, it has that vibe as you're building out the base on Mars, because you have that, I don't know, I just like to see worlds expand. I like to see from one game to the next different combinations and whatnot. It's just incredibly aesthetically appealing to me. And I think that's also part of the reason why On Mars is my top pick. So I'm just thinking about other ones that I've enjoyed, like the Gallerist, Lisboa. I fell off Lisboa as time went on. I was really high on it at first, but like none of these games had that communal competitive building type of thing going on. I think that was a really big factor for me liking it. There's definitely a lot. Like there's a lot of rules. Like no joke. There's a lot going on to this
very
game.
much flies in the face of the games, the trick taking in ladder games that you're talking about for sure.
But
I think
I've had so much fun with it.
Yeah, it's interesting that we can enjoy these super rules dense games like On Mars and the other one I'm about to talk about, Clinic, and as well as these lighter, and here's the thing, they are lighter, but they're still working your brain in a way that you're still working at these games in a way that we find pleasurable. Like work is fun for us, right? The way we engage with these games.
Yeah, this is a highly personal thing, though. That's one thing I've kind of noticed over time. Like I have friends. Well, I mean, my wife Jessica, she is a heavy gamer, and she frequently is not that interested in playing something, even if it's kind of medium weight, because she just like she needs the buy-in to like that big complex strategy. Like she's very good at those kind of things, and she'll play non-heavy games, but it's never her preference. I have other people, other friends of mine who I'll like, a new Knesia comes out, or I'll learn about a Knesia that's like 8 years old, but I just never knew about it before. I'm like, let's play this game. It takes 5 minutes to teach. And I'll play it and I'll be like, this is so cool. And I have friends who are like, yeah, it's fine. And, for those people, they kind of need more. It's not enough. And so what I've realized for me is my threshold to be satiated in a game is around the 30-minute mark. And I think everybody has their own threshold. Some people is at 60 minutes. Some people is at 5 minutes. Some people like to, just play like 10-minute games, bam, 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 one after another. Whereas for me, I need to be that 20 to certainly 20 minutes, but closer to 30-minute mark before I kind of feel like it was worth getting into the tussle of it, which is a relatively low amount. But there have been a couple of these card games that I played that I've really liked. I'm just like, I wish it was twice as long, which is kind of a silly thing to say, but that's just me realizing my personal buy-in amount. And I guess people also have a buy-out amount where they're like, ugh, after 2 hours, no thank you. Right? We all have that window.
If anything, I would say that's probably more prevalent. And for me, I don't necessarily have a buy-in time. Like, it has to go a certain length. Like, I don't necessarily really dig on a game that is going to, like, a 10 or 15-minute game. It's just, there's not enough there. Like, give me more. Like, so I would say a minimum, roughly, 30 minutes or so. But I don't know that I have a huge cap. I mean, I enjoy.
You have a lot of evidence to show your cap is, if it exists, it's pretty high up there.
Right. I mean, like, I'll be honest. High Frontier, not my favorite. Okay. But, and I was going to bring up, because I have a copy of it downstairs, Mega Civ, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But these are experience games to where these are a once in a blue moon type thing. So those are the outliers.
I feel like those break the cap, right? Like for me, usually my cap is around 3 hours. Like
for
after
me,
3 hours.
About 4.5 hours, probably.
But there's always an exception. Yeah. I played a 4-hour game of Brass Birmingham. Was freaking great. I played 6-hour games of Eclipse, had a wonderful time. I played Advanced Civ once and it took us 14 hours and I had an amazing time. So like there's always those asterisks, right? Expectation versus reality is important.
And that's the thing. Like as long as a game, like Struggle of Empires is one that we recently played and we want to get it streamed on the show. And it's a game that we all pretty much enjoyed universally, right? Everybody that played it with our group. And you're talking, that's probably going to be a 6-8 hour game, right? So going into it, I know that. I expect that. if I was playing on Mars and that thing went 6 hours, I would hate my life.
Yeah.
I would be miserable. But it's all about coming into it with a certain expectation, and as long as it fits within that reasonable expectation window, then I'm good. Then I'm satiated. I'm happy with that. As long as I'm okay. I'm even okay if a game ends prematurely, if that's a feature of the game to where it could. I'm like, oh, wow, that was unexpected. That was amazing. Even if it came at my expense. It's the other direction that is troublesome.
Yeah. Also, downtime. Like, there's so many different factors to these things. But if you play a 6-hour game and you're doing something every minute, you could cool. But frequently games that are really long, you could leave the table for 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, not my favorite. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So let me talk Clinic for a bit. So again, 3.5 years ago, we ended up playing this. I originally got the original edition from Alban Viard was picked up by a friend of mine, Paul Chad, at Spiel. I think it was 2014. It might have been 15, 16, one of those. And super low production quality in the whole 9 yards. Well, the deluxe version came out, and wow, it's really, really nice. Ian O'Toole did the artwork. Ironically, Ian O'Toole did the artwork on both the games I'm talking about, on Mars and Clinic Deluxe. And the iconography, he did a really, really good job. And with these complex games like this, these heavier games, the iconography is dense in both of these. And having a good graphic designer that can convey information clear and concisely, I think lowers that barrier to entry. And I think Ian's done a marvelous job on both of these. Now, Clinic is arguably the hardest game I've ever played. It's that or Pipeline, maybe, from a spatial aspect. I struggle horribly when it comes to spatial games. And in Clinic, you're building 3D. You're building both on a 2D floor, but also on a floor that is above it. And I struggle with adjacency in this game majestically. And
doesn't this one have like a weird view? I've never played Clinic before, but I feel like I've seen images where like the tiles are like diamond shaped, like you're kind of looking at it
Yep,
from a 45-degree angle. Yeah,
that's exactly it. And so it just it's one that is I've really, really struggled with. And the base game is hard enough, but the theme in this does come through in a very, very cynical way, in that the goal is you're building obviously a clinic or a hospital, and you have to hire nurses and doctors. You need to treat patients. That's going to be your income in the given game, is treating patients. The worse condition the patient is, the more money you make. I'm going to go with theoretically insurance is covering this, whatever. But from the cynical nature of things, there are 4 different levels of patients. There's white being the least bad, if you will, and the lowest value that you get for treating, all the way up to red, and then there's yellow and orange in between.
Yeah.
The longer you go without treating a patient, the worse they become. And so it kind of behooves you to not treat them early and let them get worse. So there's that cynical nature of, oh, I want to wait until they're worse. Also, there's a cynical aspect of the game to where the higher level of doctor, the doctors are not willing, they cannot treat patients that are a higher or worse off than their level, right? So they can't treat somebody who is in a worse shape than what they are capable of. But the cynical aspect comes from, they also can't be bothered to treat anyone that is not at their level. So, that's beneath me. And it also, though, pays a credit to the nurses in the medical field, because it basically is saying that the nurses are really the backbone of the medical industry, in that they bridge the gaps. So nurses add a +1, -1 for a given doctor, and multiple nurses can help like an intern level doctor treat this horribly bad patient, which is what I ended up doing in last night's game. I used 3 nurses and a very low-level doctor to be able to treat these horrible, really bad-off patients. And so the theme comes through, but it's not only difficult from that spatial aspect, but then it becomes you're buying points. All your points in this game, almost all your points in this game, come from money that you're generating, but only money that you're generating that round. So you have to not only budget the amount of money that you have from round to round, because, okay, I'm going to try and treat these 3 patients. It's going to end up getting me $60, let's say, but then I have to pay my expenses out of that. Maybe I net $28, whatever that may be. That $28, I have to not only buy victory points, but then I have to bank that money, some of that money, to be able to afford to add on to my hospital, to be able to hire doctors, nurses, and orderlies, and the whole 9 yards. And so it becomes a budgeting aspect of how many points can I buy? And, oh yeah, there becomes a tussle for turn order. Whoever has the fewest points goes earlier in turn order, which is going to allow you to build certain buildings first that are piece limited. We'll let you hire doctors, either higher value doctors, and these, again, are piece limited, same with nurses, or admit patients. And the admitting of patients, well, you want to admit the patients that
work for your hospital. Yeah,
exactly. Like, obviously, I would like the worst patients, but if I'm not equipped to deal with them, I don't want to get stuck with those, because eventually
you want the just right patients.
Exactly,
the Goldilocks patients.
The Goldilocks patients, if you will. And so that turn order becomes okay, if I'm buying victory points, I want to buy the right amount. I need to save enough money, but I also, do I want to go earlier in turn order? Is it okay if I go later in turn order? And so it becomes this juggling act of all of these things, plus being able to, we played with a couple of expansions last night, one of which is hospitals, which introduce burn victims, and helicopters. And the helicopters have to have a place to park in your hospital. And if you don't, then you can't admit them, and then the patients die and you lose points. And then not only that, last but not least, there's an efficiency aspect of how you build your hospital, because every human, whether it's patient, doctor, nurse, or orderly, needs to be able to move around and come from outside your hospital into. And every room that they have to go through to be able to get to their destination costs time. And time is money. Money is points, so it costs you points at the end of the game, the more time, and there's no way to get back time. So it becomes this very intricate puzzle of how do I balance all of these different things. And I have struggled majestically every time I've played this game, but even though I did well in last night's game, there's that aspect of, oh, I made everything in one building. Then it becomes a puzzle of, can I do this, but do it more efficiently and be able to build a second building within my complex, which is worth more victory points. And then, not to mention, like I said, there's 70 maybe expansions in there's an ungodly amount of modular expansions in this, that it becomes a system in and of itself, like an Age of Steam, to where different maps introduce different little MacGuffins. And yeah, I enjoyed it far more than I thought I was going to, having revisited it. And I just, now my interest has peaked to be able to explore more and more of these modules, these expansions. But then the question becomes, how many is adequate to add in a given game? Does it just become way too much? So yeah, I enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to, having revisited it. And yeah, really enjoyed Clinic.
It sounds neat. I've never had an opportunity to try it. I've just seen, images and whatnot on Twitter. But that does seem like a pretty interesting balance. I imagine, I mean, again, not having played it, not knowing the rules beyond what you just said, I imagine that buying victory points moment, does it feel kind of like the Age of Steam auction to a certain extent, where like everything is going to inflect off of this exact moment? Like, I spend this much money and I'll have this much left afterwards. Yeah. Also, just talking about,
there becomes a pivot point to where like for instance, in last night's game, there was a pivot point to where I was like, man, I really don't want to go later in turn order because I have to be able to build this module. I
Yeah.
need to be able to go earlier in turn order. But I'm going to have this surplus of money then that I can't really do anything with. Sure,
Yeah.
I can spend more money next round, but I don't know that I can, like I need to. So then that pivot point of, oh, I don't mind going later because I have so much money. I really need to be able to buy these points and get them while I can. And so, yeah, it does become that seesaw of when does that jockeying matter less and when does it matter more. And yeah, it's there.
I imagine you have like pedal to the metal moments too, where you're like, okay, you don't want to just barely have the most points. I imagine you're like, well, if I'm gonna have the most points, let's just go. Like I'll go last for the rest of the game, but like, let's at least put some distance here to make it worth it.
Right. And then can I hold on? Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've really enjoyed my plays of it. I've played it a couple times now since been back from the vacation, and I think it's going to become a game like on the YouTube channel. We kind of have like different little series going to where we have a Power Grid series of games going. We have Age of Steam with different maps. We have Oath going, and now I think there's going to be a clinic. Kind of because of all the expansions, and we have enough interest in wanting to do that to where we're going to continue exploring that game. And it's nice to be able to kind of like what you had talked about, revisit these older games and games that I want to play, but also it benefits the show by being able to do this because there's interest in doing that, right?
Yeah, there's a thing about games with this many rules too, where if they're kind of loaded up in your brain, you have that extra incentive to get them played again. I mean, like I said, last night we played Brass Birmingham, and we're just like, all right, let's play Lancashire like soon,
like, while it's fresh. So you don't have to feel like you have to relearn a game. Or
Birmingham again for that kind of thing. I mean, we played Dead Reckoning a few times, which is a game that really impressed me. I like that game a lot more than I thought I was going to. But it was a similar kind of thing where it's like there's a lot of rules there, but when it was loaded up, we just kind of like jammed a whole bunch of games over the course of a couple of weeks because it was just like we could just pop into a game of Dead Reckoning. Whereas normally, if a few months go by, you don't pop in, you reteach it. Right. And then you have to relearn it as the teacher, right? Because you're like, I mostly remember, but there's a lot of little nitpicky things I got to remember. So yeah, there's a sunk cost essentially to playing these games once. And if you enjoy them, being like, okay, well, let's at least get a couple of games out of this while it's fresh.
In our head. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. So that's kind of what you and I've been playing. Acquisition wise, not a lot on my end. I'll just hit mine. I know you were like, I get a lot. So
how far back do you want me to go?
I normally do, but obviously with the vacation and everything, I've gotten 2 prototypes recently, which is Power Core Call of Cthulhu, and I know that the Kickstarter kind of it got canceled. It's going to relaunch, so that's kind of on hold right now. And then the other one that, I mean, it's a mixed bag. It always is for me. Martin Wallace, some really, really great games, some less so. And so whenever Martin comes out with a new game, I'm always curious to at least learn about it. Sure. And Bloodstones recently had its campaign, and so I got sent the prototype. And this feels old school Wallace, which is a compliment. That's a good thing. And even though the theme is kind of fantasy war type thing, the mechanisms feel not too terribly complex, which I think is where Martin Wallace's games excel. Yeah. And so recently
it's pretty streamlined. Yeah.
Oh, you actually, you did, didn't you?
I mean, you and I swim in very similar professional waters. I have copies of both of those prototypes within 8 feet of me right now.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean,
I made videos for both of those.
Right. Yeah. There are times to where, I'll do something first, and then
we ship games back and forth to each other quite a lot.
Exactly, yes. Right. And there are times to where I'm like, oh, John's already done a video. You know what? I don't need to beat my head up against the wall. John, let me catch it. Oh, you haven't released it yet. That's okay. Let me see the video so I can watch. Okay, that helps, and vice versa. And so That helps. So yeah, like you said. So yeah, Bloodstones. I'm looking forward to checking it out. We originally were going to play it last weekend at game day, but I got the new. They're constantly tweaking the rules, so I got the latest version of that. So I'm looking forward to diving into that. And the last one I'll talk about is Flashpoint South China Sea from GMT. So Harold Buchanan actually reached out and is like, "Hey, Edward, I asked GMT to send you this because I would like you to check it out and see if it's a game that you want to feature." And it's I haven't even opened the box yet intentionally because I want to be able to do like a learn with me type game on stream. And so the gist of it, looks like it's soloable, highly soloable, but 2-player card game is what like I don't want to say like Imperial Struggle or Twilight Struggle or Imperial Struggle, right? Yeah, okay. Can we put a hiatus with the word struggle in Steam and Imperial? I'm getting those so confused right now. But that type of card play interaction it looks like, and so I'm looking forward to diving into that as well. So that's me. Go as far back as you want. Talk about some of the ones that you
Well, I've been on a bit of a card game buying spree since that convention. There's a game called Maskmen, which came out in 2014, I think, which I'd heard about for a while, but never actually got into. But I got that game and I played it a few times. It's a wacky shedding climbing game where your cards don't actually have values. It's like Mexican luchador themed, and you essentially play these out, and as like, you know, if a purple wrestler goes down and I play 2 orange wrestlers, then for the rest of the round everybody knows that orange beats purple, and you like put little tokens out here.
Yes,
you have. Okay, yeah,
yes.
It's a really fascinating game. I'm not sure I'm not sure about the decision space. I don't want to say it's not there. I've really enjoyed playing it, but I oftentimes feel like the hands may be playing me, but that might be just because I'm not very good at it. It's super cool from a mechanical perspective. I also got,
come on. It has luchadors.
Yeah, right. I mean, last time we played, it was just we were constantly quoting Homestar Runner quotes and Strong Bad quotes because of the similarity of the icons. Yeah, I got Cat in the Box and I played that earlier this week, which is another completely wacky trick-taking game where it's actually the inverse of Maskmen. Now that I think about it, it's no suits but only values, and as you play them out, you say what their value is. It's the Schrodinger's cat type of thing. Like, you don't know what it is until it's observed. So you play a 3 and you say, that's a red 3. And you're like, okay, everybody knows it's a red 3. Complete, I don't know, but it's not a brain melter, but it's just so strange. Like, the first time, I've only played it once, but like that very first hand, it was just like, what is going on? But I really got into it as we played. I also picked up Mille Fiori, which is the newest Reiner Knesia game. I haven't played it yet, but I really like Reiner Knesia games. Gypsy King.
Wait, hold on. On that note, what would some of your favorite Knesias be, real quick? Like, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot.
I mean, I'm sure I'm going to miss something obvious, but the first one that pops into my head is Aristocracy, actually, which is a game that nobody talks about. Talk about a game that just had no impact on the general board game.
I'll be honest, I don't know it. Tell me.
It's super cool. I really, really like it. It fired Blue Lagoon for me, which was another Reiner Knizia game that I really quite liked. But Aristocracy is this game where you have this big board, this big grid in front of you, and you randomly deal out 111 tokens face down onto this board.
I'm looking at it on BGG. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on your turn, all you do is you start by flipping over 3 of these face up. And again, they're face down. You have no idea what they're going to be, but the positioning can be important. So after you flip these up, then you do one action, and that action only relates to one type of symbol that's out there. Like, I'm going to take sheep, and then every sheep that's been revealed by either you or maybe somebody else on a previous turn, you take all those sheep and they can be worth points for some set collection, which is pretty simple. But also you can say, okay, I'm going to do all the castles, and then every castle that's on the board, you put your own token down onto them. And then there is this this is why I like it more than Blue Lagoon, because it's all about connections. It's not about majorities, essentially. It's little races to connect various pieces, like make a path of your connected tokens from one token to the next. You take them, they're points for you. Whereas in Blue Lagoon, which is a game I liked, it was just you're constantly counting and recounting. Like, I have 7 strength, you have 8. Okay, next turn, I have 7 strength, you still have 8. Okay. But in this one, so you have this randomness of you have no idea what you're going to flip, but you can decide where to flip. So it puts you in a situation where you can get lucky, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if you've heard this term before, but like, people who seem to be lucky a lot are likely the people who made themselves available to capitalize on lucky things. And that's what this game is all about. You could flip over 3 things that are awful for you, and that happens frequently. But you could be like, if this is a castle, it's amazing for me. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to hope it's a castle. And if it's a castle, you feel like you're in Vegas and you just hit the jackpot, which is fun. But then if it's not a castle, you're like, okay, well, I didn't really think it was going to be a castle, right? I'm not crestfallen about it. You're just like, oh, it's a sheep or something like that. Okay, that changes my perspective. And the really cool thing about it is that you flip 3 of these tiles, and in general, you're going to flip 2 or 3 different symbols, but then you only activate 1 type of symbol. So that means you're leaving other symbols face up on the board. The next person goes, they flip up 3 tiles, and then they can capitalize off of the symbols that you flipped over as well. So you always have these decisions. You're like, okay, well, if I do sheep right now, I'm taking 3 sheep. You're like, maybe I'll do this other thing instead. And the next person goes, they flip over 2 more sheep, and they're like, ha-ha, boom, 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 and they pull all of those back.
Huh, okay, yeah.
Exactly. Shared incentives in this game, because you have the things that other people do incentivize your actions more and more. And then, of course, you also have this race to try and get your pieces down. And then on top of that, the thing that really brings all this together is when you bring those resources off, like the sheep and the wood and whatnot, it leaves empty spaces. And then there are king and queen tokens. And if you do those, you pull them off the board, and then you put down a number of your tokens as you want onto empty spaces. So if you flip a thing over, hoping it's a castle and it's not, it's a wood, then later on, you or somebody else might remove that wood. And then if you take a queen action, you could plunk your own piece right down there, make the connection, get 6 points, and feel amazing. It does a lot with a little, and I know many people have bounced off it because they're just like, it's completely random. 111 random tokens. You have no idea what you're going to pull. But every single time I played this, I've found strategy there. I mean, like, yes, tactics as well, of course. You're dealing with the things that you flipped up, but so much of it is about going for that lucky play. And when you hit it, it's amazing, and you feel good about yourself. But of course, it's not just like you rolled dice and you got the right roll. It's like you roll dice into the exact right positions. You have half of the you have control over half of it, the spatial positioning of it. Anyway, super cool game.
I'm like I said, I'm looking at it on BGG now. I need to get a copy and check this out. So okay.
Again, I don't want to overhype it. A lot of people have bounced off it, but it really works for me. I like tactics in games, and I really like that input randomness, because it is input. You flip them over. It's not like you flip them over and you get what they say. You flip them over and then you make a decision based off of new information. And it means everybody is paying attention to every single turn, because you're like, oh, they flipped a sheep. Oh my gosh, don't take sheep, and they do something else. And then that also feels like, one went over, and then you flip some over. And so, yeah, it's a cool game. Babylonia is great at high player counts. I'm not crazy about it at lower ones. Indigo is great. Other ones that are flying right out of my brain. I like Reiner Kasich quite a bit.
See, and for me, and this is awesome to hear about some of these, but like for me, I tend to think old school. Knesia are my favorite. Modern art, Medici, Ra. Right?
Ra.
Samurai. Have you played Samurai?
Not really. So there was a really good iOS app, like for the iPhone, a decade ago. I bought it. I played a couple times against the computer, but I have no interest in playing against computers, so I kind of stopped. I've never played against another person. I remember thinking it was cool, and it's my understanding from what I remember, there's a decent amount of samurai DNA in Babylonia, which I do very much like.
It is one of the most stressful games that I play, that I've played. Yeah. And I'm exhausted after playing it because the stress level is so high in that game. I'm not good at it, but and it's not so much about the stress of winning necessarily. It's don't take that move, don't take that move, don't take that move. Damn it, you took that move. Or took that space. And I'm like, I've been working for that, and you're and so it's constant for 45 minutes to an hour, and I'm drained after that. So I don't know how much I really enjoy that, but I have been impressed with that when I've played it. Tigris and Euphrates, I appreciate, even if I don't love it, because I feel like that's almost a lifestyle game.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Yeah, I don't love Tigris and Euphrates. I appreciate it. I think it's a very good design. I frequently end games of Tigris and Euphrates less happy than I was at the start.
Right.
Again, that whiner I talked about earlier, like, oh, of course I drew these freaking tiles. I can't draw a red to save my life, or, the only thing I can draw is red, or, those kind of things. And of course you would catastrophe there. Like, that totally screws me. Like, oh, well, I was trying to hit somebody else. You're like, okay, well, I'm out. Oh, it
I
really
love
feeds
that
the
you
whiner.
have that self-awareness. That is amazing. And I love hearing that.
I'm glad my friends like to continue to play games with me.
That's amazing. And another one I'll mention is Battle Line. I absolutely love Battle Line. So a lot of this is all older, but now I'm really curious about aristocracy. How do you
Aristocracy.
say that?
It came out in 16, I think.
19.
It was a tasty minstrel game.
Yeah.
19?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what is time? 19. Yeah, I picked up a copy of it actually when Tasty Minstrel was kind of doing a big liquidation because they're not really making board games anymore. And I was like, I'm going to grab a copy of this now while it's cheap because it might be expensive later on.
Good news.
Yeah, that one's good.
Still reasonably priced, I would say.
Yeah.
Looking at the secondhand market.
Another one, I would just be kicking myself if I didn't mention this. Probably my favorite Reiner Knizia, but it's funny how you forget about things. Spectaculum. Have you played this one?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's Reiner Knizia's Cube Rails game.
Spectaculum?
Spectaculum. Yeah, it's
okay.
I love it. I have played it so many times recently. It's Reiner Knizia's take on essentially that light stock market vibe. And in kind of a similar vein to Aristocracy, maybe that's part of the reason I like these two. It's a Cube Rails game where you have a hex map and you are putting these tokens out, but the structure of a turn is you draw 3 random quote unquote cubes or discs in this game, essentially tracks. And then at the end of your turn, so you can think about what you have. And then on your next turn, you must place these tokens down. You have to place all of them. So you have that input randomness. Okay, well, I got purple, purple, red, but now what do I do about them? It's the inverse of Aristocracy. When you think about it, you randomly, well, I guess you randomly get it before you do the positioning, and then you put the positioning down. Sure. And then you also have 2 actions, and the actions are just buy a stock or sell a stock, and you buy or sell at the price. And when you put these tokens down onto the board, there's spots you cover up, and they're super simple. They're either plus or minus on the stock price of the disc that you just put down. You have to grow the network out. And there's also these spots that like give an immediate dividend payment, essentially like, here's a bunch of money for the stocks you have. And there's also the inverse where it's like, lose a bunch of money for the stocks that you have. So it has this awesome tension where you have the intimate randomness trying to figure out what you're going to do with the cubes you take, discs that you take. They might not match up with your stock portfolio, but here's the thing. I think I've won every game of this I've ever played. So I think that's part of it. Again, it kind of works in. And so that stress, like next time I play, I'm like, I got to win this time as well. Maybe I lost once. I think I lost once by like 2 points, but it's just this really lightweight, super streamlined stock game that also plays incredibly good at 2 players. Which is super rare, I think, for stock market type games. The majority of the times I played this has been 2 players, and it works super well. I cannot recommend this game more. I mean, I'm gonna plug myself just because I can. I put out a video of me playing this with my good friend Anastasia, 2 players on JonGetsGames. So if you search JonGetsGames Spectaculum in Google, you can check it out. You can see me. I teach it, and then we play a full game in 45 minutes or something like that. It's a really cool game. It's not the easiest game to come by. It's not like ludicrously hard, not like crazy expensive. You can get it for like $20 to $30 rarely, but it's not super easy to come by. Anyway, that's my Spectaculum rant.
I see your video here on BGG.
Yeah.
So that's now 2 Knesias I need to go look up. Yeah, for me, it'd probably be, I think, Modern Art or Ra. Or Medici, because Medici, it's a 6-player game and it's amazing. It never fails. I have never won that game. I'm the inverse of John in that regard, to where but I absolutely love Medici so much. But God, I'm bad at that game.
I've never played it. I've played Raw and Modern Art, but I've never had an opportunity to play Medici.
Oh, we need to. Okay.
It's an auction game, right?
Huh? Yeah. Yeah. One of these days, I need to get you out for HeavyCon, to where, look, it's a convention to where all you're doing is playing games and we're not doing convention work stuff, you and I, to where we can play games together. We need to make this happen.
That'd be fun.
I'm all for that.
I've definitely been anti-auction for most of my gaming career, which is, I think, part of the reason why I've gone away from those. Obviously, that's changed with the Cube Rail infatuation. Now I'm just medium on auction. I used to be anti, like I would avoid games with heavy auctions, or not just auctions in general. Now I tolerate them, if that makes sense. I
mean, we
love
did
stocks.
play Age of Steam. So,
Yes.
right.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
That.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What else? Throw out a couple others that you recently did.
I just got a copy of Gypsy King, which is an old game, came out in 2007, which I'd never heard of before until it was talked about on the Hidden Gems podcast, which is another podcast I really like. They talk about games that nobody else talks about in podcasts, which is really cool. That's why I like it, because they frequently talk about games I've never heard of. And this is one of those, and they had a lot of positive things to say about it. It's super light. I don't really know the rules, but I remember what they said is it's kind of like Turn Order, the game. It's like this really simple game where the things that you do will affect the turn order of the next turn, and you're moving wagons around and that kind of thing. And I don't know, it called to me, and there was a copy that was relatively cheap, so I picked up a copy, and I want to try it. In general, they loved Spectaculum as well, so I'm on the same level with with their perspectives.
Okay.
Yeah. I picked up the other games to talk about. I just yesterday got a copy of Velonimo, which is a ladder climbing shedding game designed by Bruno Cathala. And that's all I know. It's been recommended to me by people I trust. So, at some point, maybe I'll have a chance to, hopefully I'll have a chance to play that one. But yeah, that's by and large the ones that I've received over the last 2 weeks or so.
Okay. All right. Nice.
Yeah.
And so for me, and I know both you and I, we as far as work goes, when it comes to doing videos on various games, outside of those games that I'm like legitimately excited to play, and let me ask you, do you get excited about a lot of these games? Or let me word this carefully, I guess, or smartly. We enjoy our jobs. We love what we do.
Living the dream.
We 100% are, and we are fortunate to be able to do so. But human nature is that you're not ever going to be excited about everything. Right. And so there are different levels of that. So obviously, we're looking forward to all of the games that we play. But there is a level of excitement that, and I think people will understand this, like the main one that I'm most excited to play, Horseless Carriage from Splatter.
Sure.
That should be here next month.
Wow, I didn't know it was coming out that soon. Nice.
Yeah, next month.
I have a friend who pre-ordered it, so I'm looking forward to playing his copy.
Right. So I can't believe it's already September. But next month, maybe November, but depending on timing of things. But that is one that, that is one company in which I don't care what it is, just yes. The answer is just yes, 100%. So Horseless Carriage, I'm looking forward to. I've played Pampero a number of times from Julian Pombo and coming out from Ape Games, which, look, there's just no other way to describe it without saying it's kind of Vital Lacerda-esque, because Julian is kind of Vital's protege, so it kind of, doesn't fall far from the tree type thing.
Right.
But it's about wind energy and solar energy in Uruguay. And the production on it is phenomenal. And it's very Vital Lacerda-esque. So if you like his type of games, you're probably going to enjoy Pampero. If not, I don't think this is going to change your mind in a lot of ways. Production looks gorgeous. I'm really looking forward to playing that a whole lot more. Struggle of Empires. Normally, we limit the number of people in the studio to 5. We're going to stream that at some point. We may try and force 7 people in here to be able to get a full complement of that. That's going to be so much fun. I'm really, really excited about it. And I'm excited about Harold's game, Flashpoint South China Sea. So I'm going to be busting that out very, very soon. So looking forward to that. So that's me as far as games that I'm like excited to play. How about you?
I have some. I have an interesting perspective on the excitement. I used, like, before the YouTube channel, I think I was a lot more actively excited and continually excited about things a lot more. And I think the biggest thing for me is out of sight, out of mind. And I just learned about so many of these, like, most months I put out a vlog where I talk about all of the games that interest me that I just learned about over the last month. And in the middle of that vlog, I get all hyped up on myself, like, this looks really cool. And then, 3 days later, I've just forgotten about all of them because I've learned about all these other new ones. And I've learned, like read the rule book to 5 other games in the preceding week because of the videos I'm making. So it's a jostling space in my brain. But there are a couple there are a couple that stick out. Interestingly enough, there's a through line for both of these. They're both they're jumping off of something else that I like. So one of them is Crossing Oceans, which is essentially Transatlantic 2 from Matt Gertz.
Mhm.
And I mean, Concordia is an all-timer. Like, it's top 10. I'm not sure where it is in the top 10, but Concordia is a 10 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned. And so that means I'm always interested to see what Matt Gertz does next. I liked Transatlantic. I didn't love it. I sold it after a couple of plays.
Yeah.
I can't. It was too long ago for me to remember my exact issues with it, but it just did not connect with me in a way that made me want to play it more. But now here's Crossing Oceans, and it was called Transatlantic 2 for a minute there on BGG anyway. And it's my understanding it's quite different. Like it's not just, they tweak some cards. Like, there's now just a rondel on the board, and there's other stuff.
It's a Matt
going on.
Gertz game, so hold on, it's got to
right.
be,
Yeah.
right? I mean, right.
So I don't know the rules to it or anything, but I'm very actively very excited to try that one because in general his games are a hit for me. Especially, you like to think that the second take on an idea is going to be better. We'll see. I mean, I don't want to say, like, because I didn't like it, it was not a good game. I know a lot of people who really like Transatlantic. It just wasn't great for me. So I'm hoping that this is the Transatlantic for me. And then the other one, I mean, there's definitely more than this, but the other one that really jumps out to me is Terra Nova, because Terra Mystica is great, Gaia Project is great, and I very rarely play them because they're long. Well, we don't actually own Terra Mystica. We own Gaia Project, and we haven't played it in years and years and years because it's 45 to 60 minute teach, and then it's a 3-hour play, and like, it's a lot of fun. My wife loves that game. She's good at it. But it's still it just makes it hard to get it to the table. And I like Terra Mystica for sure. But here's Terra Nova, which is essentially Terra Mystica Light, and it uses a lot of the same mechanics. I think I haven't seen the rules. I've just picked apart the images that Capstone has put out, like so many people online.
I mean, it really does look like Terra Mystica. It really does.
You got the power bowls. You're moving I mean, if they remove that, it's not Terra anything, right? But it looks like the tracks are gone entirely, and it seems like it might be just a little more focused, like angling for that like 60 to 90 minute playtime for most groups. I mean, maybe some groups can finish Terra Mystica in an hour. I don't know. That's definitely not me in my group.
That seems ambitious. Yeah.
It does. So that excites me. Again, I really like hitting that 60 minute to 90 minute mark in a game so I can play multiple games in a night. So that one has me really excited to try as well. There's definitely some other stuff. I've backed a few Kickstarters over the last year, and if I backed a Kickstarter, then that intones some level of excitement, but I'm having a hard time remembering what any of those are because I've, again, learned about 15 games this week already. But yeah, it's definitely exciting. Also, I think this is going to lead into the next thing you want to talk about. I'm not going to be going to Essen this year. And
I still don't know.
Yeah, I officially bumped my hotel room to 2023. I'm actually surprised the hotel I go to, they haven't just like cut me off at this point, because I had the hotel room booked for 2020 and I was like, could you just change that to 21? And then could you just change that to 22? So this is the third time I've had them bump the same exact reservation. But this year we almost did, but it didn't logistically coincide with some other plans that we had, and that's fine. But like, if I was going to Essen, I think I would be getting more amped about some of these things and like really combing through that list. I know myself, like if that was actually happening, the excitement level would be growing. It's just easy to not focus on it because I'm focusing on other things, because I'm not going to be going to Essen this year. Hopefully in 23 though. The last time I went was 18. It was 2018. So, and I remember I left 2018 and I decided not to go in 2019 because like, it's a long trip. Maybe it's an every other year kind of trip. And then something happened in 2020. So
right. For me, to be determined on whether or not I can, Jess and I make it to Essen. I want to go. I still have yet to go. This is the longest I've ever gone as an adult and not been on a plane. And so this is like, I'm trying to, so I was at Gamma Trade Show when the world ended, essentially. And
I was there with you.
Yes. That was the last time.
We had sushi together the night
Yes.
before the apocalypse, essentially.
Yeah.
The Thursday night of Gamma, we
Yep.
were all eating sushi in a restaurant, having a great time with, Clay and Eric Martin and whatnot. And then we were just like, the next day I went home. The next day it was like, nah, the water's boiling, time to leave.
Oh yeah, I was the board and dice guys. They were panicking. They were like, "Are we going to be able to get back to Poland?" And
it was like March 7th, 2020 or whatever. It was an odd moment to be at a convention.
It really was. Like we were worried. Like I changed my flights to make sure that I was flying in with Julie. So like if we needed to rent a car, we could carpool back home.
Yeah.
Like we didn't know. Yeah. So that was the last time that I've been on a flight, and so. Both both Jess and I are we've gotten our vaccines and boosted and the whole 9 yards. It's just I still don't. We recently went on a 2-week trip, but we drove cross country with the kids and stuff, and so I don't know 100% how I feel about that. We did go to a local convention, PAX East. But it was fully masked and the whole 9 yards, and and I still don't know how I feel about it, and logistically, I don't know if it's gonna work. And I'm hoping we'll know in the next week. I'm hoping, and if so, then I have a lot of work to do. If that's the case, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. I hope so, because Essen is like, I'm like a kid at Disneyland at Essen.
Yeah.
Like that is,
Essen's incredible.
It is. Spiel is wonderful. I in fact, I think it was yesterday I got the media pass like email, and I'm like, and so the
time to make the decision.
Yeah, exactly. So super excited about that. But yeah, I wanted to take a second. So this is where we stop talking about board games for a minute. So thanks, goodbye for those that don't care about this stuff. I went on this 2-week vacation with the family. So Jess and I, she has 4 kids. We have 4 kids. They range from 8 years old up to 15. And last year, she asked the 15-year-old, 14 at the time, whatever, anywhere in the world, we'll go. Where do you want to go? And she was like, I want to see Mount Rushmore. And we're like, really? Like, that is what you choose.
All right.
Okay. All right. But then again, this is also the girl that wanted to paint her room beige. Okay. So she's a 90-year-old woman. She enjoys crocheting and knitting. And no, she's amazing. It's a joke we have. Anyway. So, okay, so we're going to do this road trip, and we were nervous because we wanted to make hotel reservations for each night of the trip because we have 4 kids, and that's like, if it were just Jess and I, we would be a lot more comfortable just willy-nilly. Where we stop, right? But when you have kids, you have a responsibility. And so we were like, yeah, but then we know we have to drive this much each day, and we were like, okay. We'll wing it and see how that goes. If that doesn't go well, we'll start planning it. Okay, cool. So the goal was to make it somewhere between Buffalo and Cleveland for the first day. We made it south of Cleveland. Awesome. And we found a hotel. Okay, fine, great. And then we started hitting all these fun places. We saw A Christmas Story. We saw the leg lamp. We saw the house. So we did that. We did Jungle Gyms north of Cincinnati, which is the world's biggest grocery store. I know it's a grocery store. Hear me. It is unlike any place you've ever. It is massive. Like, think Essen size grocery store. It was ridiculous. It had everything. And
you like to think so. Jeez.
And the cheese display and the meat display, they had everything. And they were like, we welcome you eating as many samples as you want. We had fun with that. They had different jerky. They had camel jerky. They had ostrich jerky. They had kangaroo jerky. It was amazing. So we had fun going there. We went to a Dayton Dragons game. The kids had a blast. They got a foul ball. That's amazing. And as a Cincinnati Reds fan, Dayton Dragons are one of their minor league teams, so that was cool. The kids got to try Skyline Chili, which, if you're not from the Cincinnati area, it's unlike any chili you've ever had. It is either you hate it or you love it. It's like almost sweet, like with a hint of cinnamon. And they serve it on spaghetti with eggs and cheese, or with onions and cheese. It is really weird. And
that does sound peculiar. I'd try it, but
yeah, it's one of those things like when you're there, you got to try it, and that's that. All right. The kids had White Castle. Look, we didn't eat all fast food. We weren't terrible, but the kids had never had White Castle. They were like, on White Castle. But the two, I guess, four things I wanted to mention. The Badlands. If you ever get a chance, go visit the Badlands. There's an 18-mile loop you can drive on. And there's like
what state is that in?
That's in South Dakota.
Okay.
It's right by Mount Rushmore. And you can get out, you can go on hikes. It's one of the most surreal landscapes that you'll ever see on Earth. It doesn't look like you're on Earth. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. That was just fantastic. We had herd of bison come by the car. We had pronghorns. We had a bunch of prairie dog, coyotes. We had all the different wildlife that we got to see up close. Never got out of the car near the bison because we're not dumb. Let's see what else. House on the Rock in Wisconsin. Have you ever
heard of the House on the Rock? I have. Yes, I've never been there, but I know multiple people who've been there.
It is the most extra thing you could. It's when somebody has obsessive compulsive disorder and nobody reins them in. It took us 4 hours to go through this house, and it was both surreal. I mean, it's like the world's biggest fun house that is just a collection of stuff. Yeah. And it was the most creepy yet fascinating thing that I think I've ever seen in my life. It has the world's biggest indoor carousel. This guy made music machines, but not like one guy playing, and he has 5 different instruments, like playing all at the same time. It's an entire room with 50 different instruments. I don't even know how to explain how over the top it was. And the last 45 minutes, we were just all overwhelmed and needed to get out of there because it was just so much. But it was, if you ever seen American Gods, the show, it's featured on there actually. And it was intense. We hit the Spam Museum, the Corn Palace, and the National Museum of Mustard. Didn't know there was a National Museum of Mustard. But you get to sample mustard from around the world, as many as you want. And who knew that there were so many different types and variants of it was amazing. We spent more on mustard than I've ever could imagine have spent. But in the end, 5,100 miles, 13 days to South Dakota, technically Wyoming. Devil's Tower in Wyoming is an amazing place a national park to explore. We had a blast with that, and you've never seen as many stars as you'll see outside there. It was amazing. And we all got along, and we enjoyed it, and we had the most amazing time. And it was just, it was great. I loved it. We were sick. All 6 of us were sick for a week of it, which you would think would make it miserable. There were moments that made it miserable, but we persevered, and it was just one of the best trips of my life, and I had a blast, and That's awesome. Loved it. And I'll be honest, I didn't miss playing games until I got back. Then I was like, oh, I really miss playing games. So, but yeah, so
Fortunately, it's your day job.
It is. So that works out. So that's kind of what's been going on. And then I got sick again, and then had internet issues and all this stuff. But hey, glad to be back. And thanks for being flexible with this, because our schedules weren't jiving there for a while.
One of the perks of being self-employed, my own boss, is that it leaves me pretty flexible.
Yes. Yep. And it's like you said, it's a huge perk. It's a huge benefit of this job. But I love it. I wouldn't change it for the world. So, all right. So hey, John, he and I both have Patreons. So
it's true.
Go support him if you enjoy. I mean, you heard his enthusiasm. It's amazing. So you can check out John. Oh, here, do you want me to plug it? You plug it.
I'll say it's patreon.com/JonGetsGames. Yeah.
There you go. And
I don't know yours, so you do yours.
Patreon.com/HCHQ. So Heavy Cardboard HQ. So, or HCHQ. There you go. John,
Yes.
On YouTube. So John Gets Games, Heavy Cardboard, pretty straightforward. We both have our own websites. It's our showname.com.
.com.
Pretty easy. Check us out. If you're listening to this, thanks. Yeah. Go check out John's show if you don't. Check out both the YouTube channels if you don't, and if you're watching on YouTube, go check out the podcast because this is going to end up being on there. And John, so you do, obviously you do your tutorials and stuff. Is that pretty much what you're focusing on, or other stuff?
I mean, yeah, the tutorials are my focus. It's where a lot of, they're sponsored tutorials, so it's how I make ends meet, so that this can be a full-time job. Although recently I have started doing a bunch of non-sponsored playthrough videos with other people, kind of akin to what you do, but just not live, and I edit them, which takes quite a bit of time. But yeah, figuring out multicam, I invested a decent amount of money in the studio about 3 months ago, so that yeah, I actually have an Imperial Steam that I said I played it recently. I actually filmed a full 2-player game of that one with 4 cameras and edited that with 4-camera multi-cam going. That video is going to go public next week, but I've been really enjoying trying that out. It essentially came from, because my tutorials I play against myself, and I've just one day, like, a while ago, a year ago or so, I was just like, I feel really jealous of the people who get to play these games, because I don't. It's like an uncanny valley. It's not quite playing a board game when I make my tutorials, because it's primarily about teaching and I'm just playing against myself. So what am I going to do? Beat myself? That doesn't make sense. So this is the way to kind of work that in. We did a bunch of them on Tabletop Simulator. We might do more on TTS at some point soon, but it's also great having the setup in here. Those haven't been sponsored up to this point. We've just been doing those for funsies, hitting the games that I really like. And so that's been kind of like the new thing that I've been focusing on. And obviously I spent quite a bit of money to get that going. And I'm hoping to keep on doing that and do like a mixture to kind of, do some of my old style, some of my new style. Novelty is always good for the longevity of something like this.
Not just for the viewers, but also for the hosts. It keeps
actually, I actually meant that 100% from my perspective, being selfish.
Yes.
Yeah,
keeping things fresh, and it keeps your excitement going. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's been fun to put those out. So yeah, that's kind of where things are at, and been doing it for 8.5 years now. So
it's crazy, right? Isn't it?
Crazy.
It really, really is. So hey, big fan of your stuff. Obviously, you're a good friend of mine. I appreciate what it is you do, and continued success, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. We'll see y'all later. Check out YouTube podcast stuff, depending on which platform you're watching it on. Thanks, Edward.
John.
All right.
Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.